All right, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and I have been going through a series of video presentations that I'm making regarding websites, creating a website. Yesterday I did about 9 presentations based on HTML, which I said is used to basically add content to our website. And right near the end of the last video that I made, I started talking about CSS, and CSS is cascading style sheets. And basically, it allows us to style the HTML content. So we're on the second leg of our three-legged stool right now. All right. And I think that what I'm going to do to start with is I'm going to come into our sandbox file. And this was day 1. So we did this yesterday. Images, and we got our test, etc. I think I'm just going to start new. So for day 2, there's nothing in here. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to create a new folder that's called CSS. And I'm also going to come in and create a brand new text document that is going to be called, again, index.html. And yes, we want to change it. So let's see, if we come back in here and bring this up, I'm just going to close this one. I want to start brand new. So again, I'm in day 2, and I've got a CSS folder, and I've got an index.html file. In fact, let's go into our CSS folder, and let's again add a new file. We'll call this styles.css. Now, sometimes people will go in and instead of calling their folder CSS, they'll call their folder styles, and they might even call their CSS file like index.css. It really and truly in the end is not that important. All right, but I've got a styles.css. All right, now I should mention from the get-go as we start here that, if there's something I forget or something I think that it's important that we talk about or whatever, I'm going to go back to our old friend here at w3schools.com. And today, for the tutorials, we'll be more concerned with the Learn CSS tutorial. You can see how extensive this is. A lot more than I'd have a chance to go over in a series of lectures as we're doing today. All right. So I'm just going to, like I said, work with this index.html file. And then we will work, we will go in and we will add some styling to that file. Notice here it says CSS is the language we use to style an HTML document. It describes how elements should be displayed. And again, this tutorial teaches you CSS from basic to advanced. So it's a great starting point. So I'm in my index file. Let's make our life a little easier and put in our exclamation point and tab. So we've got that, and let's just call this CSS practice. All right, that's all we've got in there. I'm not going to worry about putting in the extra meta tags, etc., but I am going to add this. And that is when I type in a link and I hit tab, notice it says rel for relationship equals style sheet, and then it wants the file. So it's in my CSS folder, and it's styles.css. Now, I can immediately tell whether or not this has been wired up and whether or not this works by just doing something like this. I'm going to go to my styles, and I'm going to type in body and just background color, and let's put in here blue. All right, that's all I'm putting in. And when I go back to here, and I bring this up with Live Server, if it's blue, like it is, it worked. I was able to successfully wire this up. Well, that's a start. All right. So I don't really need that to be blue anymore, but I will tell you the first thing that I'm going to do in here. All right. I'm not going to put anything for right now in there, but I'm going to put in what's referred to as a universal selector. Okay, you don't like that? I'll get rid of that. And that's it. That's that. All right. And I'm going to put some stuff in there for in just a second, but I want to show you first what I'm doing and why I'm doing it. So I'm going to put in here an H1, and we'll call this CSS practice. And let's put in a couple paragraphs. So I'll put in a lorem, 50. And then I'll put in another one, and we'll make it 30. All right, so we've got that in there. I'm going to save, and I'm going to go back into my live server, and there it is. Now, not much in there, but what I want you to see is this. It's kind of hard to tell, but there has been some margin and padding put in here by default by the browser. All right, I'm actually going to grab this, and I don't know if it's going to let me bring it up directly inside of Firefox with this URL or not, but I'm going to try it. I don't want that. Now, so there's the two. All right. And you may or may not be able to tell, but there's a little bit of difference between the amount of padding, etc. Could be in the type of font that's used, etc. But what I want to make sure of is when we start here, I don't want the browser to have any effect on my padding or on my margin. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to come in and I'm going to set up my universal selector, and I'm going to say margin 0, padding 0. And you might say nothing happened. Well, yes, it did. One thing to realize, I can't right mouse click now and choose Open Live Server. You can only choose Open Live Server from an HTML file. So when I come back to here, now I can open Live Server. Oops, try it again. No, I don't know what happened. There it is. And notice how everything has now been pushed up to the top. All right. Now, there are a lot of reset files. I just created my own, but I do want to mention two of the ones. One of the ones that's mentioned in our book and another one that's used a lot. The one that's mentioned in our book is Normalize.css. And you'll see it says a modern HTML5 ready alternative to CSS resets. And if I download that, this is what's in it. And basically, again, it's to unset and make sure that everything is browser agnostic. So in other words, the idea is if I run this reset file or the one I just showed you or another one I'm going to show you in just a minute, that ideally your web page should look the same on any browser. Now there's another one by Mr. Eric Myers, who's one of the founders, big people, so to speak, with CSS. So I'm going to put in here, I'm going to choose that Eric Myers CSS Reset. And this is it. Now, I just want you to see it because that's it right here. This is the whole file. You'll notice that virtually every HTML tag there is, margin 0, padding 0, border 0, font size 100%, font inherit, vertical aligned baseline. All right. Then the body, you want to set the line height to 100%. The list style, there won't be any for ordered lists and unordered lists. Block quotes, so again, there's a couple things in here. We can go in here and we could add this. We could add this as a file. So I could come in here, for instance, and I could grab this. Just want to show you the ways that we can do this. I can take that, I can copy it. I can go in here and add a new file. So let's add a new file. Let's add a couple of them in here into our CSS folder. So I'll add a new file, and I'm going to call this reset.css and paste that in. So now I've got that one in there. File, save. And let's add one more. Now, this is overkill. Of course, you wouldn't do this. But again, I'm going to put in new file, and we're going to call this normalize.css. All right. And probably what I should have done instead of doing that is I probably should have come in here and just found the normalize file and just copied it in. But I'll do a Control-A, Control-C. And then we'll come back in here and we'll paste that in. And I'll do a file, save. So I now have 3 different ways if I wanted to go and add some reset. I could do what I've done here, which is this, and put the reset, make it simple, just margin and padding. Or I could come in here, and you should do the reset before you put in your own. All right, so I could come in here and I could do link, and I could say CSS/normalize. All right, and that would work as well. Or I could come in here and say CSS Reset, and that would work as well. All right, I'm not going to say any more about it than that, other than those are available to you. If you want to take advantage of them, I'm going to leave those in here for now. All right, so we've set this up, and I put in an H1 tag, and I put in a couple paragraphs. All right, let's put in, we'll put in here CSS practice. Here's an H1 tag. Do want to mention, I may have mentioned this the first day, I may not have. What if I did this? H1 tag. The system is going to be confused because there's an H1 and there's another H1. All right, so in here I come in and I use one of these HTML entities. So I'm going to say less than and greater than. And notice that after I've done that, here is an H1 tag, and it looks the way that I want it to look. I'm going to add 2 more of these. And I'm going to put an H2 in here and an H3. Oops. All right, so I now have this in there. And when I open it with Live Server, you can see it. Okay. All right. So let's talk about the 3 ways that you can add styling using CSS. So the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to come back here. Whoops. I'm going to come back here, and I'm going to get rid of these 2 paragraphs. Just the text that's inside. I'm going to leave the paragraphs themselves in there. All right. In fact, I'm going to add 1 more. All right. So I'm going to say here, the first example will show some inline CSS. This type of CSS is highly discouraged because well, that was interesting. I guess that's a shortcut for iframe. Oh, isn't that interesting? Must be a way to turn those off. Because using inline CSS mixes your CSS right into your HTML. All right, so what does that mean? Well, let's say I wanted this to be blue. Just this front right here, I want that to be blue. All right, in fact, let's do this. Let's go to here and let's go to body. And I'm going to say background color. Is there like a cream? No. How about corn silk? That looks good. All right, not cornflower blue. I want it corn silk. There. All right. Did that go and actually make the background color different? There. Okay, I want that to stand out a little bit. Why? I'm going to show you right now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my H1 and I'm going to make it blue. Then I'm going to take my H2 and I'll take my H1 and make it red, my H2 and make it white, and my H3 and make it blue. Let's do it like that. So I'm going to come in here with inline CSS and I'm going to say style equals color blue. But you can see I put the style tag right inside of my HTML. You can do that, and notice it worked. All right, it worked, and it worked just fine. But it's not the recommended way of doing this because, again, I have done just what I said. I've mixed it up in there. Now, I could come in here. Let me copy this. I'm going to remove this in just a second, but I'm going to make this white. And I'm going to make this, in fact, the first one should have been red. I'm sorry. So red, white, and blue. All right. And you'll notice there it is, red, white, and blue. The white doesn't show very well, but you can see that it's there. All right. Let's change that color and try to come up with something to make this all look a little nicer. I'm going to try here to come in, and instead of the background color here, we're going to try to make it like a darker gray. Pound 333. No, that's too close to black. That should work. All right. Made it some shades of gray. There. There's the red, there's the white, and there's the blue. Okay, all is working. No problem with anything. But again, I'm using inline CSS here. Now all three examples have this. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to come in here with my second paragraph, and I'm going to say the second example will show some internal. All right, this type of CSS is better than inline CSS because at least it does not mix the CSS right into the HTML. However, they are both in the same file. This is typically used to style a particular page in a website. Let me bring that in here. So again, this is used with our inline. This is used to style a particular element in a website. So what's the difference? Well, we don't need this anymore. We don't want this. All right. But what we do is we come in here and we use style tags. Now I can come in and say, if it's an H2, I want the color to be white. And you'll notice after we do that, once again, it's white. All right. Okay, no problem. So the first example will show some inline CSS, and let's take these paragraphs and make them bigger so that if you want to read this, you can. Right now it's kind of hard unless I go and make that bigger like that, which I can do, but I don't really feel like doing that. So, because it gives us a chance to play with some more CSS as well. So let's come in here and say we want our paragraphs to be font size. And I'm going to put in 2 rem. I don't know if that's going to be too big or not, but let's see. Well, you can definitely read it now. So the first example will show some inline CSS. Again, it's highly discouraged because using this mixes your CSS right into your HTML, typically used to style a particular element. The second example shows some internal CSS, which is better because at least this does not directly mix right into this. However, they're both in the same file. Whereas inline is typically used for an element, internal is typically used for a web page. All right, let's do the last one. Before we do that, let's pretty this up a little bit here. And that is, I'm going to come in here and I'm going to put in a line break tag here. And I'm going to put in a line break tag here. And I'm going to put in a line break tag here. All right. So the third example, will show some external. This type of CSS is best because it puts your CSS in its own file. This is typically used to style the entire website. All right, so what's the difference? Well, now I want to put that in here. So it's my H3. So I would take my H3 and I would put it in like this. And I would say I want that to be blue. All right. So let's go and take a look again. And let's see if I've got my red, my white, and my blue. And you'll see that I do. I could have put line breaks in here. Probably would have made it a little easier to read as well. So again, inline CSS is highly discouraged because it mixes your CSS right into your HTML. And if you're still confused on that, if you are still confused on that, all right, looks like I'm already over on my time, and that's totally fine. This is important though. You put it right in here. All right. The second type of CSS, there we go, that we put in was internal. So that was internal. And as it says, it's better than inline because at least it's not right in the HTML itself. However, it's still in the same file. So whereas inline CSS is typically used for a particular element, internal CSS is typically for a page. And the last example, this one, we put it right inside of our CSS file directly. Now, all I have to do to fix these, so to speak, is to come in here and grab this stuff. I'm going to cut this, Control X, and I'm going to remove both of these style tags because I no longer need them. Then I come in here, add this. Let me put my P tag at the bottom. All right, and let me put my H1 tag, which was red. All right, and now when I do switch back to here, this won't change. This should look exactly the same, and it does. All right, but now I can go back to my index file and I can remove this. And I can remove this. All right. So CSS practice. I've got my H1, my H2, and my H3. Well, look at this. It didn't grab my H1, so evidently I did something wrong. Let's see what I did wrong, and then we'll finish this first lesson up. H1, I've got a double quote there. Let's see if that fixed it. And there it is. All right, end of first lecture.